Welcome to part 2 of the amp build. Today we're going to get everything put in the chassis. We're going to get the tube sockets put in, the potentiometers, jacks, get the board ready to go. I already got the board cut out to the size I need, and in order to get the locations for the eyelets, I'll just print out a full-size sheet with where they go, center punch them, drill them, and put the eyelets in. And I'll take you to the other part of my shop and show you how I do that. Alright, as you can see, you pretty much have everything mounted to the chassis. Got the tube sockets in, the pots, the board's got the eyelets in and got that mounted. I mount that on standoffs to keep it away from the back, and that seems to work well for me. So one of the next things I'll do is I'll pull that board back out, and then I'll start by wiring in the heaters on the tubes. For that I like using Teflon coated wire. The reason being is it won't melt the insulation when you're soldering it, and doing heaters is a pain. Probably one of my least favorite things to do when I'm building an amp, so Teflon coated wire comes in handy for that. For the rest of the amp, I'll use a cloth pushback wire. Just really nice and handy. You can just cut it and push the insulation back without having to strip it. Makes a really nice clean looking amp. So I got my heater wire twisted and got all my heaters wired in, got them nice and neat and tucked away. This is my least favorite part about building amps, and that's why I do it first, get it done and out of the way. Next thing I want to do, start populating the board with all the components. One of the things I like to do is I'll set up one of my meters and clamp the probes into a vise. That way, even though I know I have them all labeled, I'll show you, I got all my components are kind of got a nice little bin for them, all organized. But just to be on the safe side, I always measure all my components. I back that off. Okay, look over here. 150K. So I grab them out of the bin and double check that they're right. Then I'll stick them in there. So let's get started on that. Alright, we're starting at the board populated with components. Before we get too far, I want to talk about capacitors. Not the electrolytic ones for the power supply, but just the general caps in the tone circuit. Back in the day, they used to come with a black band around one end, and that would indicate the outer foil of the capacitor, and that's the part you wanted to put towards the ground in your circuit. Nowadays, as you can see, they don't come with a black band. And it does make a difference noise-wise in your amp. You can help keep it a little bit quieter if you know which end has the outer foil on it. And to do that, I use an oscilloscope. I'm going to take a screenshot, or screen video, of my iPad to show you. What you want to do is hook up your scope leads, one to each side of the capacitor. Of course, this is the ground probe. And then all you want to do is grab a hold of your capacitor. And what that's going to do is going to induce noise into the capacitor. And whichever way is worse, as I'm looking at it here, that one looks pretty bad. This way, let's watch it on the scope, is a whole lot better. So the end with the ground would be the end that should have the black band on it. And then all I'll do is take my black marker, put a black band on it. That way we know where the outer foil is, excuse me, and know which end to put to ground to help keep the amp a little bit quieter. Let's talk resistors. I use two different kinds of my amp. I'll use metal film for most of the amp, and I'll use carbon comp in a few areas. If you were to do a search on the internet and look up amp building and resistors, you will quickly go down a rabbit hole of opinion as to what kind of resistor you should use and why. I'll explain to you why I do what I do. Carbon comp resistors can be inherently noisy. They have a bit of self-noise to them. So if you were to build an entire amp using carbon comp resistors, the noise floor just sitting at idle would be a little bit higher in that amp than if you used metal film. So that's why I use metal film in most of my amp. Where the carbon comps are kind of nice, and people say they kind of got a mojo to them, and that's what you should use. You get that vintage sound. But the truth of the matter is, where that kind of comes into play is under high voltage swing applications. The carbon comp resistor will actually drift a little bit. The resistance will change. And really the only place you're going to find that in an amp is on the plates of your tubes. So I'll usually use carbon comps on the plates, and I use metal film everywhere else. So I kind of get a little bit of that magic, but I'm still able to keep the noise floor really low. All right, we pretty much have all the components populated on the board, with the exception of some 68K grid stopper resistors, which I'm out of. The next step is going to be running some jumper wires where they need to be, according to the schematic on the back of the board, and I also run flying leads off here so that after I drop it in the chassis, I can just grab those and solder them to where they need to go, tube sockets, potentiometers, and such. And we're one step closer to a working amp. If you like what you're seeing, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button also, and the notification button if you want to be notified on future videos that I'll be doing. Thanks for watching.